Yeah, well, Tom Nichols, you actually have the new piece out in The Atlantic about Mike Pence. His comments about January 6th insurrection at the Gridiron dinner. When he said President Trump was wrong, I had no right to overturn the election, and his reckless words endangered my family and everyone at the Capitol that day. And I know history will hold Trump accountable.
He continued, make no mistake about it. What happened that day was a disgrace, and it mocks decency to portray it any other way. Tom's new piece in The Atlantic is entitled Mike Pence is warning us about Trump, but we are too complacent to hear it. So, and Tom, you write in part, quote, Pence told us something horrifying this weekend about the condition of our democracy. The national underreaction to his comments, however, is a warning that we have all become too complacent about the danger my former party now represents. Let us stipulate here that Pence is shamefully late to this criticism and has no obvious intention of going further. He had his one moment of courage, and there will be no others. It might not sound like much for Pence to admit what millions of people already know. But within the Republican Party, this is about as close as you can get to open heresy. Pence's team deliberated making even this small move against Trump. Yet Pence's comments have been shrugged off by both the press and the public. Republican leaders have no intention of speaking the truth or decency to their base. And until someone in the party of Lincoln is able to muster even the tiniest fraction of Lincoln's courage, we will indulge our complacency about the Republicans at our peril.
Well, they keep it to themselves, Tom. For the most part, they just keep it to themselves when they say again, off camera, that Donald Trump is a threat to America, that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, that Donald Trump destroys everything he touches, and that they worry about it for the 4 years when he's president of the United States. And then they go out in front of cameras and talk about how great the guy is.
And yet, here's Mike Pence saying something that should be earth-shattering in our politics. In the piece, I did a kind of thought experiment. Imagine if Hubert Humphrey, after the riots in Chicago in '68, had said, Lyndon Johnson sent those people, and I was in danger, and hundreds of innocent Chicagoans were in danger, and history will hold Lyndon Johnson accountable. It would have changed our politics. It would have been epical, earth-shaking. The pillars of our republic would have trembled. The vice president goes out and says, Donald Trump endangered my life and the life of everybody on Capitol Hill. And nationally, we kind of go, well, it's Donald Trump. What are you going to do? And I think that's part of the problem. That it's not just the Republicans, hiding in the tall grass about this. It's all of us. It's a national underreaction to a vice president telling us that the president of the United States is a dangerous autocrat who put everybody's lives in jeopardy. And our reaction to that has been, this kind of national shrug. And I think that's really dangerous.
So, Molly, what do we think? These January 6th comments, as striking as they were, and we should again note they were done off camera, but still, they matter. Does this change a single vote within the Republican primary field?
No. And the thing I think about Pence that has really undermined him here is that he was very quiet for a very long time, and now he's coming in right before, we think he's running. So I think that undermines a lot of it. But he also did not go on camera. He did not write, an op-ed saying, look, we're in trouble, people. He said it, he said these comments. And so I don't think it changes the needle. And I also think ultimately it's too late. Republicans had a chance to break with Trump after January 6th, after the first impeachment, after the second impeachment. They keep having an opportunity and they keep not taking it. And now he is, when he's left alone, he grows. And, you see these February polls. He had 4 polls that show a Trump bump. You can't get rid of him without pain.
Yeah. And, David Drucker, there's a reason why Mike Pence and Nikki Haley and all these other Republicans who want to be president are afraid to cross Donald Trump, because just as Trumpism doesn't scale in general elections, anti-Trumpism doesn't scale in the GOP. Just ask Liz Cheney at 2%.
Yeah, and I think that's key here. And I understand, and I've talked to voters about this, their frustration with Republicans. And I've talked particularly to voters who voted Republicans for decades until Trump or until 2020, and they will complain to me all the time. Why won't, and name some Republican that serves in Washington or high up at a state level, why won't they tell the truth about Trump, and why won't they criticize him, and why won't they, fight him? And of course, I always explain to them that it's their voters that they don't want to make angry at them. It's their voters that they don't want to appear as though they're calling them stupid. And as a politician, Trump aside, one of the worst things you can do is tell the people that you need to vote for you that they don't know what they're doing, and that the choices they made politically were moronic choices, were false choices, were poor choices. And they find themselves caught in this box because the Republican base still really appreciates Trump. And to the extent that you can eliminate Trump in a primary, the way you have to do it is not relitigate 2020 and fight with Trump about stolen elections. You have to point out that it's an issue of effectiveness and wins and losses. That's an argument you can make, and that's an argument that you can win. But just having the argument that, can't you see what happened? Don't you understand? And they're going to look at you and say the whole thing's rigged, or even if it wasn't rigged, it wasn't fair. Or why are you telling me that this is worse than what we have? And so it may be cathartic for a lot of people, but the way you do this is by saying, I will do it better. That can work.
Tom, I was in the gridiron when Pence made those comments, and at the time they did sound very forceful, and everybody I spoke to was pretty struck. I know there was some criticism of the fact that he said it too late and it wasn't on camera, but he was as forceful as I've certainly ever heard him about Trump. He also, by the way, said that the only Republican nominee he would promise to support was himself. So it does sound pretty much like he's running. So do you think the fact that if you think that the media is kind of moving on from this story quickly, is it just because we've become kind of inured to general drama around Trump himself? And this is one more data point of people who worked with Trump turning against Trump, and we've seen a slew of them from previous White House officials who've written books exposing how terrible it was to work with Trump and how much chaos there was in the White House. I mean, is it just that Trump himself engenders a certain amount of, well, we've seen this before because there's been so much of it?
Inured is exactly the right word. I would even say numbed, exhausted.
Exhausted.
We're just exhausted by it. And I think, Trump counts on that. When you think of the things that happened, not just on January 6th, but right before and right after, these were incredible events that somehow we've just gotten used to it. And I think that
right.
is, that the real danger here to democracy is complacency. That we say, well, the guardrails held, the system is resilient. That's really not an answer.
It's not enough.
If you were in an elevator that plunged 100 floors and the emergency brakes kicked in right at the last minute, you wouldn't say, I'll do that again. I'll take that elevator.
Right.
You would actually want to look at that and figure out what went wrong. But I think people are just wiped out by it.
Mika, what would probably have